What not to focus on when you're starting your startup. I thought I was so smart when we were starting our startup. However, for someone who is allegedly smart and experienced, I certainly had a knack of focusing on the wrong things. Sometimes, as I look back, it's amazing we were able to get the company off the ground. And I don't want you to repeat the same mistakes we made when we were getting started. In today's video, I'm going to explain to you what you shouldn't focus on when you're starting your startup, what you should focus on when you're starting your startup. I hope you like it. Hi, I'm Brett. On my channel, I help early-stage startup CEOs like you raise money and grow your startup. So if this sounds like you, then hit the subscribe button and the bell so you get notified every time I release a new video. Now let's get started. What you shouldn't focus on when you're starting your startup. Let me start with a story. When I started building my company and preparing to raise funding, I spent a huge amount of time focused on recruiting university professors to be on our advisory board. I know what you're thinking. Don't you need an advisory board because investors require you to have an advisory board? No. No, they don't. Well, that's what I thought too. And I spent a lot of time and energy building a pretty good advisory board too. But there was one little problem with my strategy. I didn't need an advisory board. There was no utility in having one. It was not going to help me get funding. And it might not help you either. I remember proudly telling my first investor, Gil, about the advisory board I was building. Gil said, "A company like yours doesn't need an advisory board." And that was that. This leads to my first thing you shouldn't focus on when you're starting your startup. Number one on our list. Doing things because you think you have to do them. All I can say is no. Do things that make sense, not something you're supposed to do that isn't going to add value. Following that rule will allow you to focus on what matters. It did for me once I figured it out. Number two on our list. You shouldn't focus on hiring a VP of sales when you're starting out. Now, there are two reasons you shouldn't hire a VP of sales early on. Number one, you're not going to find anybody good when you're starting out. A great VP sales isn't going to be interested in joining your startup until you have significant traction. Second, you'll be the best salesperson the company will have for a long, long time. It does not matter whether you've never sold before or not. Your knowledge and passion for what you're going to do will shine through. Okay, number three on our list. You shouldn't focus on maximizing equity ownership and dilution. Now, here's what I'm not saying. I'm not saying you should give away equity that you don't need to give away. That would be stupid. I am saying that you shouldn't try and fight for every % of equity you can. A singular focus on maximizing equity can get in the way of adding the right investor or bringing on the right employee. Instead, focus on fairness. Fairness will naturally lead you to the right equity percentages with the investors and hiring a committed and motivating team. Number four, you shouldn't focus on your exit when you're starting out. Sure, it's great fun to fantasize that you're going to be the next unicorn, but focusing on an exit can get you in big trouble. Here's how. One of the most famous trick questions investors love to ask CEOs is, what is your exit strategy? It's a trick question because investors already know what the exit strategy is for your startup. Hint, it's an acquisition or an IPO. They don't need your help. So what's your answer if you get asked this question? It's this. I'm focused on building a great company, not the exit. The exit will take care of itself. Number 5 on our list. You shouldn't focus on voting rights. This is another way to cost yourself an investment. Let me start by saying I fully acknowledge that some startup CEOs have successfully negotiated for different classes of stock, so they are allegedly protected from being fired. However, I don't think it helped them one bit. If an investor wants you out and you need their money to go forward, then they will be able to force you out. All you need to do is look at what happened to Uber's CEO and founder, Travis Kalanick, if you don't believe me. Kalanick got on the wrong side of his investors, and the investors forced him out on the condition of Uber's next funding round. I could go on and on about the things you shouldn't focus on, but I'll just add one more for now. Number 6 on my list. You shouldn't focus on trying to save founders that want to quit. Now, I'm an expert on this one, since I did have a couple of founders quit on me. The first time a founder quit, I did everything I could to keep him from quitting. And you know what happened? Of course, he still quit. The next time it happened, I realized that a founder quitting is a blessing in disguise. You need co-founders that are just as fanatical as you about your startup. Anyone that quits at the first sign of problems isn't going to be someone you can rely on when the going gets tough. And trust me, the going will get tough many times. Now, what should you focus on when you're starting your startup? Let me start this section with a story too. Years ago, I was being interviewed by an executive recruiter to become CEO of a startup. The recruiter, Jim, said to me, there are 2 things that a startup CEO needs to do. Number 1, recruit, recruit, recruit. This should be your primary focus when you're starting out. Scratch that. This should be your primary focus for the life of your company. You cannot build a great company without a great team around you. That's how important recruiting is. Let's move on to what Jim said next. The second thing is number 2, sell, sell, sell. As I said earlier, you will be the best salesperson your company has through the life of your company. I don't care if you're the geekiest engineer that's ever lived. I don't care if you've never met a customer before. You've got to get out there and sell. Next, you'll want to, number 3, focus on your own core area of expertise when your startup is just starting out. You'll be in divide and conquer mode when you're starting out. No one can just be a manager at the start. So, one of your many responsibilities will be focusing on what you're good at. If your expertise is marketing, then you focus there. If your expertise is engineering, then you focus there. Your teammates will focus on the other areas of your startup. Now, your final focus when your startup is starting out is this, number 4, execution. You'll want to help your CTO or VP engineering manage the process to keep things on track. Before you can sell, you need a product or service to sell. Even if you're not technical, you need to be involved in the building of the product. I've seen too many startup CEOs just assume that the technology will just work. And that's a recipe for disaster. Now, what did you learn from today's video? Put your answer in the comments column below today's video. And if you have any questions for me, put them in the comments column too, and I'll be happy to answer them for you. Now, I have one more thing for you today. It's my free startup pitch deck template. It has all the slides you need to develop an awesome pitch deck. Click the link below today's video and it's yours for free. And for more great content, click on the video at the end of today's video. And if you haven't already, then click the subscribe button to get notified every time I release a new video. I'm Brett at brettjfox.com. Thanks for watching today. Take care. Bye.